The courthouse was quiet, save for the faint scrape of shoes against polished marble floors. Sunlight streamed through tall, arched windows, casting long, golden stripes across the hall. The building smelled faintly of old wood, lemon polish, and the sharp tang of nervous anxiety. At the end of the hallway, a retired K-9 named Kota pawed at the floor, ears perked, his leash held firmly by Officer Daniel Reyes, a grizzled man in his 40s who had been Kota's partner for over 8 years. He had seen Kota apprehend armed suspects, track fugitives across fields and highways, and even rescue children from dangerous situations. But today, the dog's behavior was unusual. He wasn't calm. He wasn't relaxed. He was agitated, almost frantic. His paws skidded slightly on the marble as he pulled against the leash, his deep brown eyes fixed on the entrance to courtroom 3. "Easy, boy, easy," Daniel muttered, kneeling to place a hand on Kota's neck. But the dog didn't listen. He barked sharply, 3 short staccato barks, and then whined, his head tilting, as if he sensed something the others didn't. Nearby, 2 uniformed deputies exchanged wary glances. "He's retired," one whispered, barely audible. "Dogs don't just act like that in a courthouse." The hallway felt suddenly smaller. People walking past gave Kota wide berths, whispering behind cupped hands. Children peered nervously from behind their parents' legs. Journalists with cameras in hand tried to get closer, but the bailiffs held them back. Daniel glanced down at his companion, a pang of unease settling in his chest. Kota had always been reliable, steady, unshakable, never unpredictable. But now, he growled low in his throat, staring at the courtroom door as if warning everyone in sight. Minutes later, the judge emerged, an older woman with a sharp gaze and no-nonsense demeanor. Judge Marilyn Carter had presided over hundreds of cases, from petty theft to high-profile murder trials. Yet even she hesitated when she saw Kota. "Is that a dog?" she asked, raising one eyebrow. "In my courtroom?" Daniel swallowed. "Your Honor, he's retired, but—" The growl cut him off. It was low and menacing, yet filled with urgency. Kota's hackles rose, tail stiffened. He wasn't just anxious. He was reacting to something real, something in the room. Emily Hart, the assistant district attorney, watched the scene unfold, her notebook forgotten in her lap. The courtroom was packed. Press, lawyers, spectators, all silent, waiting. Emily had prosecuted countless cases, but this felt different. The tension was electric. Suddenly, Kota barked again, long, sharp, commanding attention. The sound echoed against the tall walls. People jumped, some laughed nervously, others whispered prayers under their breath. The bailiff moved to the courtroom door, trying to calm the dog. "Sir, you'll need to take your dog outside now." But Kota ignored him. Instead, he lunged forward slightly, nose twitching, eyes locked on the defendant's table. A murmur ran through the crowd. All eyes swung to the man sitting there, Mark Fletcher, mid-30s, nervous, twitching. He avoided looking at the dog, but sweat gleamed on his forehead. Daniel tightened his grip on the leash, heart racing. "Kota, heel, sit." Kota didn't obey. He barked again, louder this time, and then did something that made the entire courtroom freeze. He stared directly at Mark Fletcher as if he could see through him, a silent accusation in every inch of his posture. Emily's pen hovered over her notebook. Something about the dog's reaction was chilling. She had seen dogs sense fear before in suspects or victims, but this was beyond instinct. It was as if Kota remembered something the man at the table had done. The judge slammed her gavel. "Quiet, everyone, sit down." Kota barked again, louder, sharper. The sound made the room jump. Even hardened reporters flinched. The bailiff stepped forward, trying to usher the dog away, but Kota's gaze never wavered. It followed the man like a predator tracking prey. Mark Fletcher shifted in his seat, eyes darting around. He muttered something under his breath, almost inaudible. Kota's ears perked. The growl deepened. Emily leaned forward, whispering to the bailiff, "What is it? Why is the dog? Before anyone could finish, Coda did something unexpected. He turned and paced toward the back of the courtroom. Gasps spread through the room like wildfire. There in the visitors section sat a small child, Noah, barely 3 years old, gripping a worn stuffed elephant. His father sat beside him, trying to keep him calm. Noah had been silent for weeks after witnessing a traumatic accident. Not a single word had passed his lips. But Coda stopped in front of him, nose down, tail stiff, ears alert. He pressed his forehead gently against Noah's tiny hand, and for a moment the entire courtroom held its collective breath. Daniel looked on, eyes wide. He's never done this before, not with a kid. Noah lifted his head, tears gathering in his large brown eyes. His small voice trembled, but it was loud enough to carry across the room. The courtroom went silent. Every adult leaned in, trying to catch a word. And then Noah spoke. It was only 2 words, but the weight behind them made everyone freeze. "Bad man." The room erupted into whispers and gasps. Some people cried. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The defendant paled, his hands gripping the table. He opened his mouth, then closed it, unable to respond. Coda growled again, stepping between Noah and the man, a protective shield of fur and muscle. Even the officers behind the bench didn't move. No one dared. Emily felt her pulse race. She had seen fear before, guilt before, even lies before, but never like this. Never a toddler, a retired K-9, and an entire courtroom frozen in a single moment of truth. The judge slammed her gavel once more, trying to regain control. Order, order in the court. But the air itself seemed charged, as if the courthouse walls were holding their breath. Every eye was on Noah and Coda. And in that moment, everyone knew. This case, already dramatic, was about to explode into something far bigger, far more dangerous, and far more revealing than anyone had imagined. The bailiff stepped cautiously forward, whispering to Daniel, "Sir, he won't move." Daniel nodded slowly, recognizing the signal. Coda had made his choice. He wasn't just a dog in the courtroom. He was the first witness. Emily leaned in toward the judge. Her voice was barely audible. "Your Honor, we may have evidence we didn't expect." Judge Carter's gaze swept the room. She saw the defendant pale and stiff. She saw the toddler small and trembling, and she saw the dog standing alert, eyes shining with intensity. And then she realized something terrifying. The truth was about to come out, and nobody was prepared for it. A soft, almost imperceptible sound came from Noah's lips again, a whisper that cut through the courtroom's tension. It wasn't the words yet, not the confession, not the revelation, but it was the beginning. The judge leaned forward, heart racing, knowing one thing with certainty: the next moments would change everything. And then, without warning, Coda lunged slightly forward, growling directly at the defendant. The courtroom fell completely silent, as if the air itself had stopped moving. No one spoke, no one moved. All they could do was watch. And wait. Because what happened next would shock everyone inside. Hours earlier, in a dimly lit office stacked with case files and half-empty coffee cups, Emily Hart stared at the folder that had landed on her desk. She had prosecuted cases ranging from petty theft to violent crimes, but something about this one made her chest tighten. The file was thick, almost ominously so, with yellowed papers, scribbled notes, and photographs of twisted metal. The top page bore a headline in her handwriting: "Hit and run, no witnesses, 3-year-old injured." She traced a finger over the victim's name: Noah Benson, the toddler who had sat quietly in the back of courtroom 3, clutching a worn stuffed elephant. Emily flipped the file open and scanned the details. The mother had been hospitalized, sustaining serious injuries. The vehicle was reported as metallic, mid-sized, but no one had caught the plate number. Witness statements were sparse, vague, or contradictory, and the man now sitting at the defense table, Mark Fletcher, claimed he had nothing to do with anything. but Emily had a gut feeling, the kind that comes from years of listening to instinct and intuition when facts alone aren't enough. Something about the way Coda reacted earlier told her the man at the table wasn't being entirely truthful. Meanwhile, the courtroom's energy crackled like static electricity. People leaned forward, whispering, craning their necks, trying to understand why a retired police dog was behaving like a fresh recruit on a high-stakes manhunt. Cameras flashed, capturing the scene for local news that would replay it countless times, but none of that mattered. The truth, the kind that could save a life or destroy one, was unfolding live. The defense attorney, a sharply dressed man with a smug confidence, leaned over to Mark Fletcher. "Don't let the dog intimidate you," he whispered. "He's old, retired. This is nothing." But the defendant didn't respond. His hands fidgeted, tapping a nervous rhythm on the polished wooden table. Beads of sweat ran down his temples. He glanced toward Coda, who now sat rigid, ears forward, eyes like amber fire. Emily watched silently. She knew that in the courtroom, instinct mattered as much as evidence, sometimes more, and Coda's instinct was screaming. The judge, Marilyn Carter, tried to restore order. "Let the record show unusual circumstances," she said, her voice carrying authority, but even she looked uncertain. She had handled high-profile cases before, but nothing quite like this. And then it happened. Coda, who had until then been locked in an almost magnetic stare at Fletcher, suddenly turned. He moved slowly, deliberately, toward the back of the courtroom. Emily's heart skipped a beat. All eyes followed. At the far end, seated on his father's lap, was Noah Benson. His small hand gripped his elephant tighter. His eyes, wide and alert, seemed to track Coda's every movement. And for the first time in weeks, the child's lips quivered, as though the dog's presence had unlocked something deep inside him. Daniel Reyes, Coda's handler, whispered under his breath, "He's never done this before, never." Noah lifted his head, eyes glistening with tears. He looked at Coda, then slowly, carefully, turned his gaze toward the defendant. The courtroom's collective breath caught. Every adult leaned forward in disbelief. And then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, the boy spoke two words that made the room stop. "Bad man." The words hung in the air like smoke. Shock rippled through the courtroom. Mark Fletcher's face went pale, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the table. He opened his mouth, tried to speak, but nothing came out. The defense attorney's smug expression faltered. He opened his mouth to object, but even he faltered at the intensity of the moment. Coda growled, deep and warning, stepping between the toddler and Fletcher. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on the strange, electric connection between child and dog. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. She had handled cases with witnesses, with confessions, even with confounding lies, but never like this. Never with a toddler's voice cutting through a courtroom with undeniable clarity. Never with a retired police dog acting as a living, breathing compass for truth. The judge slammed her gavel again. "Order," she commanded, but even her voice couldn't fully pierce the tension. "Bailiff, control the situation." No one moved, they couldn't, everyone was transfixed. Emily quietly rose from her seat, moving toward Noah. "Hey, buddy," she said softly, crouching to his level. "Do you remember?" Noah nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. He hurt Mommy. He drove fast. Coda barked. His voice trembled, catching in his throat. He clutched Coda's fur as if drawing courage from the animal. Emily swallowed hard, her notebook forgotten. The details the boy was revealing, details only someone present at the scene could know, were explosive. If admitted in court, they could break the case wide open. The courtroom murmurs rose. Parents exchanged uneasy glances, reporters scribbled furiously, deputies glanced at each other with tight jaws. Coda sat firmly, ears alert, growling softly, as though guarding Noah from a threat invisible to everyone else. Daniel whispered, "I've never seen him react like this, not once. Something's wrong." Emily turned back to Noah. Who was driving the car, sweetie?" she asked gently. The boy's lips quivered. "Different man," he said softly, almost a whisper. The words barely carried, but Emily heard every syllable. She froze. "Different man," she echoed, her pulse hammering. She glanced toward Mark Fletcher. He froze. His eyes widened, sweat glistening on his forehead. The defense attorney's confident demeanor faltered into panic. Noah buried his face into Coda's neck. The dog nudged him gently, reassuring, protective. Emily felt the weight of the moment. A toddler and a retired K-9 had just said something no adult in the room had expected, something no evidence had revealed. Judge Carter's eyes narrowed. She tapped her gavel, but her voice lacked its usual authority. "Bailiff, escort the parties for a recess. I need to consider this." As the courtroom slowly emptied, whispers filled the hallway. Emily walked alongside Noah's father, her mind racing. "We need to check every detail, every report, every surveillance camera. If Noah's memory is correct, someone covered this up." Noah looked up, his tiny eyes still wide, brimming with fear and trust. Coda saw," he said softly. Emily's heart clenched. The retired dog had been more than a partner to Daniel. He had become a witness, a living piece of the puzzle that would determine justice for the child and his mother. Daniel gave Emily a solemn nod. "He's telling the truth, he knows." Emily swallowed. She knew the next steps would be delicate, high stakes, and unprecedented. The boy's memory, the dog's behavior, and the man at the defense table now formed a web of truth and deception that could explode at any moment. As Noah clutched Coda and looked up at Emily, she realized something chilling. The next few hours would decide the fate of two families, and one dog had just set the courtroom on fire. And in that moment, Emily Hart understood fully. This case, which had seemed ordinary on paper, was about to become extraordinary. Because sometimes the smallest voices and the most loyal of animals see the truth that adults, witnesses, and evidence alone cannot. And everyone in the courthouse, from the judge to the press to the defendant himself, had just witnessed the beginning of something that would unravel far more than anyone expected. The courtroom doors closed behind the recess, but the tension remained. Outside, whispers spread like wildfire. The dog knew, the boy remembered, and someone was hiding the truth. The stage was set, and nobody, not even the defendant, could predict what Coda, or the boy, would reveal next. The courthouse had emptied for recess, but the tension didn't leave. It lingered like a storm cloud ready to burst. Emily Hart walked down the polished hallway alongside Noah's father, David Benson, and the boy, who clung tightly to Coda's fur, as if the dog were his only anchor in a world that had become terrifyingly chaotic. Noah was silent now, tears streaking down his cheeks. His small hand barely released the grip on Coda's ear. Emily crouched to meet his gaze. "You're okay, buddy," she said softly. "I know it's scary, but can you tell me what happened that night?" Noah's large brown eyes shimmered with a mixture of fear and determination. He didn't look at Emily for comfort. He looked at Coda, whose ears twitched as if urging the boy to speak. He was fast," Noah whispered. Mommy screamed, Coda barked, and then his voice faltered. He swallowed hard, trembling as the memory clawed its way back. Emily leaned closer, keeping her tone gentle. "Then what, Noah?" "He bad man," the toddler said, pointing faintly toward where Mark Fletcher had been sitting before recess. His voice was almost inaudible, but it carried a weight that made Emily's heart seize. The words weren't just random, they were accusation. Truth. David Benson's jaw tightened. "Noah, we talked about this." "Don't," he began, but his words faltered under the boy's intensity. Noah ignored him, eyes wide, nails digging into Coda's fur. Emily reached into the case folder in her bag, pulling out a photo of the twisted wreckage from that night. "Do you remember this?" she asked gently. Noah nodded slowly, eyes scanning the picture, then lifting toward Emily. "Truck, shiny, red." Emily froze, red. The reports hadn't listed a color, just metallic vehicle. Only someone present at the scene could know this. She glanced at David, who looked as stunned as she felt. "Red," she whispered. "Are you sure, Noah?" The boy nodded vigorously. Coda barked. He ran after it. "Bad man in it. Mommy's scared." Emily's pulse raced. Coda, the retired police dog, had reacted to the vehicle the night of the accident. The toddler's memory, finally unlocked, was confirming what Daniel had already suspected. Someone had lied, someone had covered up the truth, and the case had been manipulated. David Benson shook his head, tears streaking his own face. "He's so little, how can he remember all this?" Emily put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Memory can be tricky at that age, but some moments, especially traumatic ones, they stick, and Coda is helping him recall it. Noah hugged the dog's neck tighter, whispering, "Different man in truck," and Mommy cried. Emily scribbled notes furiously, her mind racing. "Different man," she echoed. That meant the man sitting at the defense table, Mark Fletcher, wasn't driving. Someone else had been. Someone who had stayed hidden while Fletcher took the fall. Daniel Reyes knelt beside Coda. "I've never seen him behave like this. Not once. He always knows the person responsible." He glanced at Noah. "And he trusts him." Emily nodded. Her eyes met the dog's amber gaze, and for a brief moment she understood. Coda wasn't just alert. He was guiding, protecting, uncovering. The recess ended too soon. The crowd began filtering back into the courtroom. Emily guided David and Noah to their seats, and Coda trotted beside them, head high, eyes scanning the room with a quiet intensity. The judge entered, gavel in hand. "We will reconvene," she said, voice firm. But even she seemed aware that this session would be unlike any she had presided over. The air was thick with anticipation. Emily settled into her seat near the prosecutor's table, her mind running 1,000 steps ahead. If Noah's testimony could be documented, it could completely unravel Fletcher's defense. But she had to tread carefully. The boy was only 3, and the defense would exploit every nuance to discredit him. The gallery hushed as the court clerk called for the defendant. Fletcher shuffled to the stand, eyes darting toward the back where Noah sat. His lips trembled as if words might fail him before the truth did. Emily noticed a subtle tension in Fletcher's demeanor. His hands fidgeted on the table. Sweat gleamed at his temples. He avoided direct eye contact with Noah or Coda. He tried to appear calm, but every microexpression betrayed panic, guilt, and fear. Judge Carter leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Mr. Fletcher, you understand that this is a serious matter. The court expects the truth." Fletcher swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. His voice was steady but not convincingly so. Emily signaled to the bailiff. "Permission to allow the child to speak with Coda present," she requested. The judge hesitated but nodded. "Granted, but carefully." Noah clutched Coda's fur and whispered into the dog's ear. Coda responded with a subtle bark, tail wagging slightly but maintaining an alert posture. Then Noah lifted his head. "He in truck," he said quietly, pointing toward the defense table. "Different man." The courtroom froze. Reporters stopped typing. Deputies halted their movements. Fletcher's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. Emily's heart pounded. "David, record the exact words," she murmured to the boy's father, who nodded, tears brimming. The judge slammed her gavel. "Order," she shouted, but no one moved. The energy in the room was electric, charged with the unspoken truth that hung between a toddler, a retired police dog, and a man who had tried to hide behind deception. Daniel Reyes stepped closer to the defense table. "Coda wants you to know he knows," he said, voice steady but firm. The dog growled softly, alerting the room to the gravity of the moment. Emily leaned forward, her pen poised. Every word Noah had spoken, every subtle gesture, every reaction, these were evidence. Real, living evidence. She knew the case was no longer just about paperwork or testimony. It was about instinct, memory, and undeniable truth. Fletcher's attorney finally spoke, trying to regain control. "Your Honor, this is absurd. A child." "Silence!" Judge Carter cut him off sharply. "This child has witnessed an event. He has provided a statement while under the guidance of a trained police dog who has been directly involved in the investigation. The court will not dismiss this lightly." Emily exhaled quietly, her pulse racing. Noah's words were not just breaking the case. They were shattering the false narrative Fletcher had relied upon. The boy's memory, Coda's instincts, and the subtle details only present at the scene, all converged to point in one direction. Noah whispered again, nearly inaudible, but Emily caught it. "Shiny truck," Mommy cried, red. Her eyes widened. The specificity, the color of the vehicle, was not in any police report. Only someone present or someone who had altered evidence could know. And now, the entire courtroom, intentionally or not, was caught in the gravitational pull of that truth. The judge paused, scanning the room. "We will take a short recess to allow the parties to consider this new information," she said. Her voice held a rare note of awe, tinged with caution. As the courtroom emptied once more, Emily knelt beside Noah. "You did really well," she whispered. "Coda helped you, didn't he?" Noah nodded. "Coda knows," he said softly, hugging the dog's fur. Emily glanced at the animal. Daniel Reyes met her eyes, nodding. "He's more than a dog," he said quietly. "He's a witness, and he's not wrong." Outside, the murmurs of spectators swelled. News crews had already begun reporting on the unusual courtroom scene. A toddler speaking, a retired K-9 responding, a defendant sweating under the weight of an accusation he couldn't refute. Emily knew the next steps would be delicate. Surveillance cameras, police reports, witness statements, they all needed to be revisited, re-examined. But one thing was clear. Noah's memory, unlocked by a loyal dog who had chased danger before and never forgotten, had just shifted the course of the entire trial. And somewhere deep in Emily's chest, a chill settled. Because while they now had a direction, she knew the truth was far more complicated than anyone realized. Fletcher's guilt, or someone else's, loomed like a shadow over the courtroom. And when the recess ended, when the trial resumed, the next revelation would shake everyone inside. Noah had spoken. Coda had watched. And the truth was about to reveal itself. The courtroom settled into a tense, uneasy silence as the recess ended. The air felt thick, almost electric, charged with the weight of what had already transpired. Cameras clicked, reporters whispered to one another, and the spectators leaned forward, eager for the next twist. But the real drama was centered on Noah, the 3-year-old boy, and Coda, the retired K-9 whose instincts had already stunned the room. Emily Hart sat rigidly in her seat, notebook open, pen ready, but the words didn't flow. How could she possibly record everything unfolding in front of her? Every glance, every twitch, every subtle reaction mattered. Every heartbeat in that room could shift the case. Judge Marilyn Carter cleared her throat, her voice sharp yet tinged with caution. "Let's resume," she said. "Mr. Fletcher, remain seated, and please no interruptions." Mark Fletcher's eyes flicked nervously toward Noah. Sweat glistened at his temples, his hands fidgeted on the polished table. He avoided eye contact with the boy, but his lips trembled, as if the two words he feared most were already forming in Noah's mind. Emily exchanged a glance with Daniel Reyes. Coda sat alert, ears forward, tail stiff. His gaze was unwavering, locked on Fletcher, scanning for the tiniest signs of deceit. He had never been wrong in his life. David Benson adjusted his son on his lap, brushing back Noah's hair and whispering, "You're safe. Just tell them what happened." Noah's hands gripped Coda's fur tightly. His eyes were wide, filled with the mix of fear, clarity, and determination that only a child who had witnessed something traumatic could hold. He inhaled deeply, the quiet rhythm of his breathing seeming to echo through the courtroom. Then he spoke. 2 words. Soft, simple, yet heavy with a gravity that made every person in the room lean in, unconsciously holding their breath. Bad man. The room froze. Gasps erupted. Reporters' pens scratched furiously, cameras zoomed in, flashes flickered, and even the seasoned deputies behind the bench couldn't help but flinch. Fletcher's face drained of color. His mouth opened, then closed. He swallowed hard, as if trying to force words that would never come. The confident air he had projected in the hallway and earlier in court had vanished completely. The defense attorney jumped to his feet, red-faced and trembling with indignation. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. A child." "Silence!" Judge Carter's gavel struck sharply, echoing through the courtroom. "This child is a witness to an event that is central to this case. We will not dismiss this lightly. Everyone remain seated." Cota growled softly, low in his throat, stepping slightly forward. He positioned himself between Noah and Fletcher, a living barrier of protection. The dog's fur bristled. His eyes glimmered like molten amber, scanning the room for any potential threat to the child. Even the reporters hesitated, as if instinctively understanding the unspoken rule: don't come between Cota and Noah. Emily's heart raced. The boy's words were undeniable, short, simple, but devastatingly precise. Bad man. 2 syllables that carried more weight than any witness testimony, more force than any forensic report. David Benson's hands shook slightly as he held Noah. He remembered, he whispered. After all this time, he remembered. Emily nodded slowly, pen hovering above her notebook. The implications were staggering. If a toddler could point out the real person responsible for a crime even indirectly, it could upend the defense's entire strategy. But the court had to proceed carefully. A 3-year-old's memory, trauma or not, could be questioned at every turn. Noah's gaze, unwavering and intense, remained locked on Fletcher. His small hand trembled, raising slightly, an involuntary gesture that made the room shiver with recognition. He wasn't just pointing, he was accusing. Emily leaned closer, trying to catch every word. "Noah, can you tell the judge what you remember?" The boy's voice, tiny but crystal clear, cut through the tension. "He hit Mommy, truck fast, bad man." Every person in the courtroom went still. Fletcher's attorney sputtered, opening his mouth to object, but the words seemed futile against the sheer force of what had just been spoken. Judge Carter's eyes narrowed, scanning the room, then landing on Noah. "You said, bad man," she asked carefully. Noah nodded, clutching Cota's fur. "Yes, different man, truck, Mommy scared." Emily felt her chest tighten. "Different man," she echoed softly. Her mind raced. The defendant wasn't the one driving. Someone else had been in the truck, someone who had tried to cover it up, someone who had manipulated the reports and testimony. Fletcher shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sweat trickled down the side of his face. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His confident facade had crumbled entirely. Daniel Reyes knelt slightly, hands on Cota, whispering, "He's telling the truth. Cota trusts him, and Cota doesn't lie." Emily glanced down at the dog. Cota's growl softened, but he remained alert, eyes fixed on Fletcher, as if silently daring him to react. The courtroom was silent. Even the murmurs of reporters had faded into nothing. Noah whispered again, voice nearly inaudible. "Shiny truck, red, Mommy cried." The specificity of the detail struck Emily like a hammer. The color of the truck had never been listed in any official report. Only someone present, or someone involved in the cover-up, would know. And now, this small boy, guided by the instincts of a retired police dog, had just unveiled it. Judge Carter cleared her throat, trying to maintain control. "We will take a short recess to allow the parties to consider this new testimony," she said. Her tone was steady, but even she couldn't hide the undercurrent of awe. Outside, whispers filled the hallways. Reporters exchanged shocked glances. Spectators murmured to each other, replaying what they had just witnessed. A toddler had just spoken 2 words that shattered the courtroom, exposed deception, and left the defendant visibly shaken. Emily knelt beside Noah as they were escorted out. "You were very brave," she said softly. "Coda helped you, didn't he?" The boy hugged the dog tightly. "Coda knows," he whispered. Daniel Reyes nodded solemnly. "He knows and he remembers. That's enough to set this right." Emily's mind was already racing ahead. Surveillance cameras, police reports, witnesses, all needed to be re-examined. Every detail had to be verified. But one thing was already certain. The toddler's memory, unlocked by the loyalty and instincts of a retired police dog, had just shifted the entire case. And as she watched Fletcher's face on the monitor, pale and trembling, Emily realized something chilling. The truth was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. Someone had been careful, cunning, meticulous. And now that careful construction was unraveling before a 3-year-old, a dog, and an entire courtroom. Noah had spoken. Coda had watched. And in the hushed silence of courtroom 3, the first cracks in the facade of lies had begun to show. The next steps would determine not just the outcome of the trial, but whether justice would finally reach the little boy and his mother. Because the 2 words that Noah had spoken were more than a statement, they were a spark, a trigger, a revelation that promised to expose a truth no one had been prepared for. And everyone inside the courthouse, reporters, deputies, lawyers, and even the judge, could feel it in the pit of their stomachs. The story was only beginning, and the worst was yet to come. The courthouse hallway smelled of polished wood, coffee, and nervous tension. Emily Hart walked alongside Noah Benson and his father, David, with Coda trotting faithfully by their side. The toddler clung to the dog's fur like a lifeline, every step of the way, as if Coda's presence alone could shield him from the storm of scrutiny awaiting inside. Emily's mind raced. The 2 words, "bad man," still echoed in her thoughts, carrying a weight far heavier than the courtroom walls could contain. The implications were clear. Fletcher wasn't the one driving the truck that had shattered Noah's world. Someone else had been behind the wheel, and that someone had gone to extreme lengths to cover it up. As they returned to the courtroom, the murmurs among reporters and spectators surged again. Cameras flashed, capturing the scene for the local news cycle that would replay it endlessly. The room felt suspended in time, every heartbeat magnified, every eye fixed on the boy and the dog. Judge Marilyn Carter tapped her gavel lightly, signaling the session to resume. "The court will now allow further examination of evidence in light of the testimony just presented," she announced, her tone careful but firm. "This includes revisiting surveillance footage and witness statements. We must ensure the truth is thoroughly investigated." Emily sank into her chair, clutching her notebook. She had spent years building cases on witness testimony, forensic evidence, and meticulous reports. But today, a toddler and a retired K-9 had changed everything. David leaned close to Noah. "You're doing so well," he whispered, brushing back his son's hair. Noah nodded, eyes wide, face pale but determined. He wasn't speaking because he wanted attention. He was speaking because he remembered. Emily turned to the courtroom staff. "We need to pull any footage from nearby streets, construction cameras, security cameras at surrounding businesses. If Noah's memory is correct, they may have caught something we missed." The judge nodded. "Proceed, but be swift. The court will reconvene once evidence is obtained." Minutes later, deputies returned, carrying several memory cards, some labeled with dates and times that matched the night of the hit-and-run. Emily felt her pulse quicken. It was a small lead, but enough to begin piecing together a puzzle that had eluded investigators for weeks. Noah clutched Coda's fur as the footage was loaded onto the courtroom monitor. Grainy images flickered across the screen, streetlights, moving shadows, passing vehicles. Emily's eyes scanned every frame. And then, there it was. A metallic, reflective truck barreling through the intersection at the precise time of the crash. Emily froze. Her pulse raced. The truck's shape matched the description Noah had given. Shiny, red, unmistakable even in the grainy footage. But something was more alarming than the truck itself. The plates had been blurred, altered, intentionally tampered with. The courtroom gasped. Fletcher's face turned ashen. His attorney stammered, "Your Honor, this footage is unreliable." Judge Carter raised a hand, silencing him. "The footage will be entered as evidence. We will verify its authenticity, but it cannot be ignored." Daniel Reyes leaned close to Emily, whispering, "Coda reacted the night of the accident. He tracked that truck. He knows who was inside. And Noah remembered. Together, they just broke this case wide open." Emily exhaled slowly, swallowing the lump of adrenaline rising in her throat. "We need to cross-reference this truck with Fletcher's vehicle," she said quietly, "and check his whereabouts that night. Everything must be verified. If Noah is correct, someone else was involved, someone who altered reports, who manipulated evidence." Noah's tiny voice cut through her thoughts. "Coda saw a shiny truck, different man, mommy scared." Emily nodded. "Yes, Noah, that's right." The defense attorney jumped to his feet, pointing a finger at the toddler. "Your Honor, I object. This is hearsay. A 3-year-old cannot testify to complex events. The child is being manipulated." Judge Carter's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Fletcher's attorney, the court will evaluate the child's testimony carefully, but the court is not dismissing observations that align with tangible evidence." Emily took a deep breath. She needed to document every detail, every nuance. Noah's memory was like a key, unlocking hidden truths. The boy's recall of the shiny red truck, the panic in his mother's scream, the timing, all of it could reconstruct the night of the accident far better than any written report. She motioned to Daniel Reyes. "Coda, help him focus. Let Noah tell us everything he remembers." Coda nudged the boy gently, nuzzling him, and Noah's hands tightened around the dog's fur. The memories began to flow, small fragments at first, disjointed images of screeching tires, flashing lights, and Mommy's terrified screams. Then clearer details emerged. The truck's color, its direction, the man inside. Every word Noah spoke lined up with the grainy surveillance footage. Emily scribbled furiously. Each recollection was evidence, each remembered detail a piece of the puzzle. "Truck turned left," Noah said. "Mommy fell shiny," Coda barked, "bad man." Daniel Reyes exchanged a glance with Emily. "He's reconstructing the scene perfectly. He's remembering things he physically couldn't have known without being there, and Coda guided him. That's why the dog reacted." Emily's pulse pounded. The implications were staggering. The child's memory, enhanced by Coda's instincts, had exposed the truck, revealed the driver, and implicitly suggested that Fletcher had been framed or misrepresented as the perpetrator. Fletcher's face contorted with panic. He opened his mouth, stammering, it wasn't me. I swear it wasn't me." Emily's pen stopped mid-sentence. Fletcher's voice trembled, the veneer of confidence completely shattered. The courtroom shifted in collective awareness. This was no longer a debate about possibility or supposition. The truth was breaking through, layer by layer. Judge Carter's voice cut through the murmurs. "The court recognizes the importance of this testimony and the corroborating evidence. We will continue the proceedings once the newly discovered footage has been verified and cross-referenced with witness statements." Outside the courtroom, whispers swelled. Reporters jostled to transmit updates. The story was already viral in real time. A toddler recalling the night of a hit-and-run, a retired police dog acting as a living witness, and a defendant whose credibility was crumbling under scrutiny. Emily leaned down beside Noah. "You're very brave, Noah. Coda helped you, didn't he?" Noah hugged the dog tightly. "Coda knows," he whispered again. Daniel Reyes knelt beside them. "He's done his job, he's never wrong, and Noah, you remembered. That's all that matters right now." Emily's eyes scanned the courtroom one more time. Fletcher's defense attorney muttered in frustration. Deputies exchanged knowing glances, and the judge prepared for the next phase of the trial. But Emily knew one thing: the pieces were in motion, and the truth was surfacing. David Benson held his son close, whispering reassurances, while Emily considered the path forward. Surveillance had given them visual confirmation. Noah had provided vivid, precise recollections. Coda had revealed instinctual truth. And now, the only question left was how far the lies had gone and who had orchestrated them. Emily exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility. Every choice, every question, every piece of evidence had to be handled with extreme care. But for the first time, she knew the truth was within reach. Because the memory had unlocked something extraordinary. Noah had spoken. Coda had guided. And now, the puzzle that had eluded investigators for weeks was starting to take shape. And when the courtroom reconvened, the revelations would shock everyone present. For Emily, one thought dominated. The boy had remembered the night of the crash in a way no one else could. And the next step would bring the truth fully into focus. The courtroom was nearly silent as Emily Hart and Daniel Reyes returned with the newly recovered surveillance footage. The energy was electric, a quiet storm of anticipation and dread that pulsed through every person present. Reporters snapped photos and whispered to each other, sensing that today they were witnessing something extraordinary. Judge Marilyn Carter sat tall, gavel in hand, her sharp gaze scanning the room. "The court will now review the newly submitted evidence," she said. "All parties, please pay attention." Emily placed the memory cards on the evidence table. "Your Honor, these come from a construction site on the night of the accident," she explained. They were overlooked in the initial investigation because it was assumed they did not face the intersection where the incident occurred. However, these cameras captured critical details. The defense attorney scoffed. "This is circumstantial at best, Your Honor. Grainy footage, cameras not even properly aligned." Judge Carter's eyes narrowed. "We will see what it reveals before dismissing its relevance." Emily signaled Daniel to load the footage. The monitors flickered, and then the first frames appeared. A dimly lit street, a line of construction barriers, the faint glow of streetlights reflecting off puddles. The angle was unusual, not the standard overhead security cam shot, but it captured the intersection, exactly the location where Noah's mother had been struck. Then it appeared. A metallic, reflective truck sped through the frame, tires kicking up water from the wet pavement. The red paint glinted under the flickering streetlights. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The footage confirmed what Noah had described, almost word for word. Red truck, shiny, fast, reckless. Emily's voice was steady but firm. "Your Honor, this footage confirms the color, model, and trajectory of the vehicle involved. It matches the child's testimony and corresponds to Coda's reaction on the night of the incident." Daniel added, "This is the same vehicle the dog reacted to and followed. The boy's memory, which has been doubted due to his age, aligns perfectly with this visual evidence." Fletcher's attorney pounded his hand on the table. "Objection! There's no proof the footage wasn't tampered with. This could be anything circumstantial." Judge Carter cut him off with a sharp look. "Silence. We will review the footage frame by frame and verify authenticity. Any attempt to dismiss this without examination will not be tolerated." Emily leaned closer to the monitors. Every frame mattered. She paused, rewound, and slowed the footage. At first glance, it seemed like any ordinary night, but the devil was in the details. The glint of the truck's rearview mirror, the momentary flash of its license plate, deliberately obscured, but partially visible due to the angle of the camera. She exhaled slowly. "Look here," she whispered to Daniel, pointing at a subtle reflection. "The plate, someone tried to blur it, but the reflection in the wet street reveals enough. We can trace it." The courtroom murmured, tension rippling through the air. Fletcher shifted uncomfortably, sweating visibly. His attorney's voice faltered. This proves nothing. It's still conjecture. Emily interrupted, firm and unwavering. Your Honor, we also see the trajectory matches the time and location reported by witnesses. The truck stops briefly at a corner, then speeds away. The driver can be partially seen in reflection, and it does not match Mr. Fletcher's build. The boy was correct. A different man was driving. The murmurs grew louder. Fletcher's face drained of color. His hands shook, gripping the edge of the table. Sweat streamed down his forehead. Judge Carter's gavel struck sharply, restoring silence. The court acknowledges the importance of these new findings. We will allow the prosecutor to review the footage and cross-reference it with other reports before continuing. Emily nodded to Daniel. Coda, she said softly, help Noah focus. Let's make sure we get every detail remembered. Coda stepped closer to the boy, pressing his forehead gently against Noah's hand. The child inhaled sharply, memory surfacing like a flood. Words began to spill from him. Truck shiny fast, red different man mommy scared. Each word made the courtroom tighter, the tension more palpable. The deputies exchanged uneasy glances. Even the journalists leaned forward, typing frantically, capturing every nuance for their live feeds. Emily scribbled furiously in her notebook, every detail recorded. Noah's memory was now guiding the investigation, corroborated by the newly discovered surveillance footage and Coda's instinctive behavior. Every fragment lined up perfectly, forming a clear picture of the night. Fletcher's breathing grew heavier. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it, trembling. His attorney stammered, Your Honor, I request a recess to discuss this new development with my client. Judge Carter nodded, granted 15 minutes. As Fletcher was escorted out, Emily approached the monitors again. Daniel, we need to trace this truck immediately, she said. Check DMV records, service logs, anything that might match the partial plate visible in the reflection. Noah remembered the color. Coda reacted to it. Someone tried to hide it. We'll find them. Daniel nodded, already on it. Outside the courtroom, whispers surged. The story was going viral in real time. A toddler's memory, a retired K-9 and surveillance footage that had been overlooked were converging to reveal a shocking truth. Spectators speculated wildly, reporters typed furiously, and the tension was palpable in every corner of the building. Emily glanced at Noah, who hugged Coda tightly. The boy's small voice whispered again, Coda saw truck, bad man. Emily's chest tightened. Each word carried weight. The boy was reconstructing the night with terrifying precision, guided by a dog who had once chased criminals and never been wrong. Minutes later, Daniel returned, his expression grim but determined. We've traced it, he said quietly. The truck is registered to Mark Fletcher's older brother. Emily's stomach dropped. Everything Noah had said, everything Coda had signaled, was now confirmed. Fletcher's brother had been the driver. Fletcher had been in the courtroom claiming innocence, while the man responsible had hidden in plain sight. Emily exhaled slowly. She knew the next moments would be explosive. The courtroom would erupt. Lives would change forever. Justice, long delayed, was finally within reach, but the fallout would be immense. Judge Carter called the courtroom back to order. All parties, please be seated. We will now address the newly discovered evidence and the findings of the surveillance footage. Fletcher returned, pale, visibly shaking. Emily's eyes met his. He avoided her gaze, knowing the evidence was damning. Coda growled softly, stepping toward Fletcher again, as if reinforcing the courtroom's unspoken truth. The dog had identified deception, and the boy's memory had revealed it. Emily rose, calm but commanding. Your Honor, the surveillance footage, corroborated by the child's testimony and the dog's behavior, clearly indicates that the driver of the vehicle on the night of the accident was not Mr. Fletcher, but his older brother. The reports were intentionally altered, plates manipulated, and the truth obscured. Noah's memory, though that of a 3-year-old, matches every visual detail we now have. The courtroom erupted into whispers, gasps, and murmurs. Fletcher's face went pale, his body rigid. His brother, sitting quietly in the back, suddenly became the center of every eye. Coda's growl intensified, low and warning, directed at the man in the back row. The courtroom fell silent once more, every person aware of the tension that had just shifted entirely. Judge Carter's gavel struck. The court recognizes the gravity of these revelations. We will now take testimony and statements from all involved parties. Emily's pulse raced. The pieces were falling into place. Noah's memory had unlocked a chain of evidence. The surveillance footage confirmed it, and Coda had guided the truth to the surface. But the real confrontation, the moment when the responsible party would be revealed, was about to unfold. Outside, whispers of the dog and the boy spread like wildfire. The story had gripped everyone. A toddler speaking 2 words that would unravel deception, a retired police dog acting as a living witness, and the surveillance footage that no one had initially considered. Inside, the tension was almost unbearable. Emily glanced at Noah, then at Coda, then back at Fletcher's brother. The truth was ready to be spoken. And in that tense, charged silence, everyone realized the next revelation would shock the courtroom to its very core. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Every eye was fixed on the man who had quietly remained in the back row, Fletcher's older brother, Thomas Fletcher. His face was pale, expression unreadable, yet the tension radiating from him was undeniable. No one had expected the trial to pivot this way, and the air was thick with anticipation, fear, and disbelief. Judge Marilyn Carter tapped her gavel lightly. "Mr. Thomas Fletcher, please step forward. The court has reason to believe you were operating the vehicle involved in the hit-and-run incident on the night of August 12th. You will have the opportunity to respond to the evidence now before you." Thomas rose slowly, his steps measured, as if each one brought him closer to an unavoidable reckoning. He adjusted his tie, avoiding eye contact with anyone, especially the toddler and the dog that had become the focus of the courtroom. Emily Hart rose from her seat, voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, the evidence we present today includes previously overlooked surveillance footage, corroborated by a child witness and a retired police K-9 whose reactions were consistent with the trajectory and presence of the vehicle. Every detail lines up, including the color, the make of the truck, and the partial license plate recovered through reflections on wet pavement." The courtroom was silent. Even the press, accustomed to sensationalism, seemed to pause, sensing the gravity of the moment. Noah clutched Coda's fur tightly, his small body trembling, yet his gaze never left Thomas. Coda sat alert beside the boy, ears forward, tail stiff, body tense. He had never been wrong, and today he seemed to sense the danger lingering just beneath Thomas's calm exterior. David Benson leaned forward, whispering softly to Emily, "He's going to admit it. He knows Noah's right." Emily didn't respond. She was focused on the unfolding drama. Thomas Fletcher's hands shook slightly as he reached the stand. His attorney's confident facade had vanished, replaced with a nervous twitch and subtle perspiration that betrayed his fear. The judge's voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Fletcher, the court requires a truthful statement regarding your involvement. You are under oath." Thomas swallowed hard, the muscles in his jaw tightening. I didn't mean for it to happen," he whispered, barely audible, yet the words carried through the tense room. His voice grew steadier as he continued, shaking now visibly. "I was driving. I didn't see her until it was too late. I panicked. I didn't call for help. I left the scene." The courtroom gasped. Fletcher, the younger brother, slumped in his seat. Sweat streamed down his face as the realization hit. He had been falsely accused. The true perpetrator had finally admitted the crime. Emily exhaled slowly, suppressing a surge of adrenaline. Every fragment of evidence, Noah's memory, Coda's behavior, the surveillance footage, had converged to reveal the truth. Judge Carter leaned forward. "You are aware that leaving the scene of an accident resulting in injury is a serious offense. Your testimony today will be entered into the record. You will also face immediate questioning regarding your actions following the incident." Thomas nodded, his eyes glassy. He glanced at Noah and Coda. The boy's gaze was unwavering, filled with the quiet certainty that only truth can convey. And Coda remained still, a silent sentinel, observing the man who had caused so much pain. Emily stepped forward. "Thomas, can you confirm that you were the driver of the truck on the night Noah's mother was injured?" Thomas swallowed, nodding. "Yes, I was. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry. I've lived with this guilt every day." Noah whispered, just audibly enough for Emily to hear, "Bad man." The courtroom went deathly silent. Coda's ears twitched, a low growl resonating from deep in his chest, a protective warning aimed not at Noah, but at the lingering tension in the room. The dog had already recognized the truth and was guarding the boy. The defense attorney, now fully aware of the severity of the confession, stumbled to his feet. "Your Honor, this cannot be allowed. My client." Judge Carter raised her gavel. "Silence. The confession is admissible. The court acknowledges the new evidence and the child witness testimony, along with the dog's behavioral confirmation, has corroborated the events." Emily's voice was steady, though her hands shook slightly from the intensity of the moment. "Your Honor, Noah's testimony, coupled with Coda's behavior and the surveillance footage, has provided a clear account of what happened that night. Mr. Thomas Fletcher's admission confirms the child's memory, which had previously been doubted due to his age, is accurate and precise." Thomas's shoulders slumped as the weight of his actions seemed to crush him in the courtroom. The murmur of whispers grew louder as the spectators absorbed the revelation. Even the press reporters, who had seen many dramatic cases, could not hide their astonishment. David Benson held Noah close, tears streaming down his face. "He remembered everything," he whispered, voice trembling. "The truck, the man, Coda, he remembered." Emily nodded, tears pricking her eyes. The toddler's small voice had exposed the truth, and the dog had been the key to unlocking it. Together, they had revealed a crime that had nearly gone undetected. Judge Carter's gavel struck again. The court will now proceed to address the legal consequences for Mr. Thomas Fletcher. His admission, combined with corroborating evidence, will be factored into sentencing and restitution for the victims. Mr. Mark Fletcher will be cleared of all charges. The courtroom erupted with whispers, gasps, and subdued cheers. Fletcher, the younger brother, slumped forward, relief washing over him as the truth finally surfaced. His hands trembled as he wiped sweat from his brow. Coda, alert but calm, nudged Noah gently. The boy hugged the dog, relief evident in his small frame. The two had been inseparable in the courtroom, partners in truth, and now their role in exposing the crime was clear. Emily took a deep breath, glancing at the crowd. "This case is a reminder," she said softly, though loud enough for the courtroom to hear, "that truth can come from the smallest voices and from the most unlikely witnesses. Justice is not always immediate, but it is achievable, sometimes with a little help from the most loyal of companions." Thomas Fletcher lowered his gaze, shame and remorse evident in every line of his face. His confession had been inevitable, yet facilitated entirely by a child's memory and a retired police dog's instincts. The judge's gavel struck again. The court will recess temporarily to prepare the next steps. The child witness, the K-9, and all relevant parties will remain in place. Emily watched as Noah hugged Coda tightly, whispering softly, "Good boy, Coda knows." Daniel Reyes nodded, whispering to Emily, "He's more than a dog, he's a witness. He's always been a witness, and today he helped uncover the truth." Outside, murmurs of astonishment filled the hallways. News crews captured every detail. A toddler speaking 2 words that revealed a crime, a retired K-9 acting as a living witness, and a confession from a man who had hidden behind family loyalty and fear for too long. Inside the courtroom, the tension remained, though it had shifted. Relief mingled with lingering shock. The case had reached a turning point that no one, neither the public, the press, nor the courtroom attendees, would soon forget. Noah had spoken. Koda had watched. And together, they had unveiled a truth that had eluded investigation for weeks. The final confrontation had arrived, and justice, long delayed, was finally beginning to take shape. The courthouse seemed suspended in a quiet, electric tension as the final phase of the trial began. Every seat was filled, every camera lens aimed, every whisper stilled. It was the day the truth, painstakingly unearthed by a 3-year-old child and a retired police K-9, would finally reach its climax. Emily Hart adjusted her notebook on the prosecutor's table, glancing briefly at Noah Benson, whose small hand remained firmly entwined in Koda's fur. The boy's brown eyes were wide and alert, absorbing the gravity of the moment, yet calm in a way that seemed almost impossible for someone so young. Koda sat beside him like a silent sentinel, ears pricked forward, tail stiff but controlled. The dog had been more than a companion. He had been a partner in truth, a living witness who had led them to the moment of justice. Judge Marilyn Carter entered the room, her gavel poised. This court will now proceed to address the charges, testimony, and evidence surrounding the hit-and-run incident on the night of August 12th. Her voice carried authority, yet a rare note of reverence lingered as her eyes scanned the crowd. We acknowledge the testimony of Noah Benson, the observations of retired police K-9 Koda, and the corroborating surveillance footage. A hushed murmur swept through the courtroom. Even the press, seasoned veterans of crime reporting, seemed struck by the unprecedented collaboration of child and K-9 in the pursuit of justice. Emily rose, voice steady but carrying weight. "Your Honor, Noah Benson's account, though from a 3-year-old, has been verified by multiple independent sources. Koda's behavior on the night of the accident and during the trial demonstrated his recognition of the true perpetrator. The surveillance footage now clearly identifies Thomas Fletcher as the driver of the vehicle that struck Mrs. Benson. The defendant, Mark Fletcher, has been fully exonerated." Mark Fletcher, seated at the defense table, finally allowed himself to exhale, relief washing over him in visible waves. His hands shook slightly, and he wiped sweat from his brow, gratitude and disbelief mingling in equal measure. The courtroom's focus shifted to Thomas Fletcher, who now faced the full weight of the law. His expression was pale, guilt etched into every line of his face. He shifted uneasily in his seat, eyes avoiding Noah and Koda, aware that the child and the dog had been instrumental in exposing his actions. Judge Carter's voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Thomas Fletcher, your admission, corroborated by both a child witness and Koda, establishes your direct responsibility for the hit-and-run that caused serious injury to Mrs. Benson. This court takes the safety of citizens, especially children, with the utmost seriousness. Your actions will now be addressed according to the law." Thomas swallowed hard, jaw tightening. I accept responsibility," he said quietly, voice trembling. "I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I should have called for help." Emily felt a chill run through her. The confession, coupled with the child's testimony and the dog's behavior, had finally brought the case to its tipping point. Justice, though long delayed, was within reach. David Benson clutched Noah tightly, whispering reassurance. "You were brave, buddy. You helped tell the truth." Noah, still small and trembling, leaned into Koda, whispering softly. Koda knew he helped. Daniel Reyes, kneeling beside the dog, placed a hand on his head. "He always knows, Noah. He never makes a mistake. Today he helped us find the truth." The press, previously whispering and typing rapidly, began to murmur among themselves. Cameras zoomed in on the duo, a small boy and a retired K-9 who had captured the nation's attention for their unlikely partnership in justice. Emily rose again. Your Honor, we also request that the court consider the role of these witnesses in the resolution of this case. Noah Benson demonstrated extraordinary bravery, and Coda's instinctive identification of the true perpetrator was crucial in ensuring justice. Judge Carter regarded the child and the dog, her expression softening. The court acknowledges the significance of their contributions. While Noah is too young to receive formal recognition under the law, the court commends his courage and honesty. Likewise, Coda, though retired, has demonstrated extraordinary service and instinct in aiding the pursuit of justice. Noah's father hugged him, tears streaming down his face. You were amazing, son. You helped everyone know the truth. The courtroom seemed to exhale collectively, a mixture of relief, awe, and disbelief lingering in the heavy air. Emily took a moment to glance at Thomas Fletcher. The man was pale, trembling, and fully aware of the magnitude of what had just been revealed. He had tried to hide behind fear and family loyalty, but the smallest witness and the oldest instincts had pierced through deception, uncovering the truth in a way no one had anticipated. Judge Carter's gavel struck again. This court is adjourned for sentencing and the preparation of restitution for the victims. The evidence, testimony, and confessions have been duly noted. Mr. Mark Fletcher is exonerated. Mr. Thomas Fletcher will face sentencing in accordance with the law. The courtroom erupted into subdued murmurs of astonishment. Reporters snapped photos, capturing every expression, the relief, the shock, the emotional intensity, and the moment quickly became headline news. Emily bent down to Noah. You did it, buddy. You helped everyone know what really happened. Noah hugged Coda tightly. Coda knew, he whispered again, his small voice steady and confident. He helped. Daniel Reyes nodded solemnly. He always does, and today he reminded everyone why dogs are more than companions. He's a protector, a witness, and a hero. David Benson held his son close, whispering, We're safe now. You were brave, Noah. You helped Mommy. You helped me. You helped everyone. Emily felt tears prick her eyes as she watched the small scene unfold. The courtroom had witnessed a rare kind of justice, not just the law's justice, but a more profound human justice, the triumph of truth, courage, and loyalty over fear, deception, and pain. Outside the courtroom, news crews broadcast the story live. A 3-year-old child speaking 2 words that had unraveled a complex cover-up, a retired police dog whose instincts had guided them to the truth, and a courtroom that had witnessed history in the making. Social media exploded, the story going viral in minutes. Headlines proclaimed, Toddler and police dog solve hit-and-run, justice served. Inside, Emily walked slowly toward Noah and Coda. Do you know what you just did? She asked softly. Noah hugged Coda tighter. Coda knew I just said it. Emily smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. Sometimes the truth comes from the smallest voices, she said, and sometimes the bravest heroes don't wear badges or carry briefcases. Daniel knelt, giving Coda a gentle scratch behind the ears. He's earned his rest, Daniel said softly. But today he reminded us all what loyalty, instinct, and courage can do. The judge, reporters, and courtroom attendees slowly began to leave, but the scene lingered in Emily's mind. A small boy, a loyal dog, and the power of honesty combined to uncover a hidden crime. Mark Fletcher approached Emily, voice trembling. Thank you truly. My brother, I don't know how we would have proven this without Noah and Coda. Emily nodded. They've both taught us something important. Truth will find a way, even in the most unlikely forms. As the courthouse emptied, Noah whispered once more, barely audible, Coda helped, always knows. Emily smiled. Justice had been served, but more importantly, the courage of a small child and a retired police dog had reminded everyone in that courtroom, and soon the world, that sometimes the quietest, simplest voices carry the loudest truths. And in the heart of Courtroom 3, where fear, deception, and tragedy had once ruled, There was now a quiet sense of awe, relief, and the enduring power of loyalty. Noah had spoken. Coda had watched. And justice, real, human, and undeniable, had finally arrived.